Kumar Rocker, the son of an Indian-born mother, a father who I believe, I didn't even know this, in the College Football Hall of Fame.
What?
And the current defensive line coach for the Tennessee Titans. I believe he worked for the Eagles when we interviewed him a few years ago, but his father, Tracy Rocker. And Kumar Rocker was one of the most famous college pitchers we've ever seen at Vanderbilt. He was a very highly touted high schooler in Georgia. He did not sign because he wanted to go to Vanderbilt and get even better, and that he did. He had one of the greatest freshman seasons we've ever seen. He had a 19 strikeout no-hitter against Duke in the postseason. He won the College World Series, and then things started to go very wrong. He was drafted by the Mets in 2021. They chose to not sign him because they did not agree with what his medical situation was. Him and their Rocker's agent, Scott Boras, there was a disagreement about the medical situation. The Mets did not want to give him the bonus commensurate with his draft slot, and so they decided, sorry, we're not signing you. It was a whole mess. And that sent him out into the wilderness because at that point he could not go back to Vanderbilt. So instead, he pitched indie ball for a year, just a few starts, and then on a shocking move on draft night 2022, the Rangers select him third overall pick, which, because he had not really pitched much and because of the injury question marks, was a shocking thing. I think we knew he was going to get drafted again, but that was a shocking moment when the Rangers took him third overall. And then, unfortunately, some of the fears about his medical quickly ended up being true, as he ended up needing Tommy John surgery at the beginning of last season. And that put him off the radar because he really just hadn't pitched very much in pro ball, and then he hadn't pitched in college in multiple seasons. And it was just like, what is Kumar Rocker? What is this guy? He comes back this year and was just immediately as good as he's ever looked. And that was both not, in theory, it was still in there, and it was like, okay, great, he just has to get healthy. But for how good he looked, it was like, oh my gosh, like there was still a delay to even believe what we were seeing. And because we didn't think that he was going to come to the big leagues this year, because the Rangers are not playing for anything, I was like, all right, well, we're going to have some really interesting conversations going into next season. You know, he's going to be competing for a spot. Instead, they call him up and he debuts last night. And he was absolutely as advertised, because what Kumar Rocker is someone that, yes, he throws hard like all the other good starting pitching prospects. He was, up to 97, 98 last night. But his slider is already, as it was in college, but now it's seemingly even better. It is already one of the best pitches in the world. There is data to back that up. The visual experience of watching it certainly backs it up. And yes, the Mariners lineup in Seattle is a nice first assignment. However, he absolutely lived up to the hype last night, and I am so excited already, looking forward to watching him again in a few days.
There's really a couple different ways to evaluate a pitch, right? One is how it looks and how the hitters react to it, right? Which in a way is actually the most important thing, how hitters respond to any given pitch, because if they look lost and the pitch has mediocre movement profile, like who cares? Like hitters aren't hitting it. That's what's most important, right? That tracks. Go watch some of the swings against Rocker's slider last night and watch the movement of the pitch itself. And you're like, oh yeah. The next thing is, the data of the pitch, the velocity, the movement, the spin, the release, all that stuff. Same thing there. And the last one is just the stats of what the pitch is doing, what it's getting from hitters, how it's performing, swing and miss, chase rate, things like that. That also checks out. And I actually want to talk about chase rate specifically with Rocker. That slider he was throwing last night was so utterly devastating. Typically, for a right-handed pitcher, the slider is not always a most effective pitch, because a left-handed hitter, specifically against lefties, right? A right-handed slider is not effective usually against left-handed hitters because they're just seeing the pitch for so long, right? Same-sided hitters, the angle's harder. There's more swing and miss on pitches outside the zone. Right on left, it's easy to see it. And to get swings and misses, you really have to get the slider under the hitter's hands, kind of back-footing them. The easiest visual to think about is Chris Sale, a left-handed pitcher, throwing his slider to the back foot of a righty.
Yeah.
For whatever
Andrew
reason.
Miller, too.
Andrew Miller.
One. But those are like the best of the best. You have to be
Yes.
that good for it to really work that well.
You have to be that good, and it's usually a better weapon for lefties against righties than it is for righties against lefties for whatever reason. Okay?
Mhm.
Last night, Rocker had more swings and misses on out-of-the-zone sliders against lefties than any pitcher in baseball this year. He threw 4 innings. 4
Right.
innings. He got 10 swings and misses outside the zone from opposite-handed hitters. Now, I know that sounds like I'm pulling a lot of different levers on the Baseball Savant button, and I said it's like a Kirkjian bit where I'm like, oh, if it's raining on a Tuesday in March.
Yeah, right.
I get that. Swings and misses, sliders outside the zone. That's a kind of a big chunk of life on the mound. So the reason that I think this is significant, obviously, is a lot of the conversation with Rocker, especially in college, was what's the third pitch, right? We understand that this guy throws 97. We understand that the slider is dynamite, but how's he going to get left-handed hitters out? He's going to need a changeup or a curveball or some other offering that changes the perspective. Slider might be okay. There are sliders from righties that work against lefties. Spencer Strider's is a good example, right? Like, it's pretty good. If the pitch is good enough, you might not need something else. Now, I'm not saying that Kumar Rocker is Spencer Strider, and I still think that there are reasons to be somewhat skeptical about him moving forward. How does the league adjust to this pitch, et cetera, et cetera? What I really want to get across, though, is what he was throwing last night was special, was straight up special.
100%. And, he threw it more than any other pitch last night. But that speaks to it, because part of the reason why the stat you just said is the factor is that there's not many that feel confident enough to even try to throw that many right-handed sliders to left-handed hitters. And so in that sense, you're not, whereas Rocker was like, hell yeah, it's obviously my best pitch. So I'm just going to keep, torturing Jorge Polanco with it. Now, I think what's interesting, the rest of the outing, 7 strikeouts, like he worked his way out of immediate first and third with no outs in the first inning. I think that the questions with him, now again, he's pitched so little since he came back. So it's ridiculous to be harsh in grading some of the intricacies of his pitching, because he looked great. So that caveat is very important. But the questions will be both, what fastball does he trust the most from both a command and swing and miss perspective? Because you could argue that he was throwing both a 4-seamer and a 2-seamer, and the 4-seamer was not performing as well as the 2-seamer at times, and the command was also not awesome at times, and that's part of why, but which is to be expected. Both just some bad misses, and then also just maybe missing some spots. So how much swing and miss he can get with the fastball is still going to be an important part of his profile. And then he did throw a couple changeups. And we will see, because ultimately, while maybe he doesn't need it, if he can develop that, now we are talking about someone that becomes very, 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 very difficult to game plan for, because that's going to be the challenge. Is sure, there are Spencer Striders out there that can go up there with 2 pitches and say, sorry, good luck, these are 2 of the best pitchers in the world. But usually, if you're going to go up there throwing 45% sliders, it's going to be hard to. Eventually, hitters are going to start to figure that out. It doesn't mean they're going to start crushing you, but they're at least going to be able to wait it out more often. So again, is literally his first start. He made, I think, 7 starts in the minors before he got called up here. That's coming off of surgery. All of this is incredibly encouraging. Once he's built up, the workload gets up. All of these things you have to just be so excited about.